She called 911 5 times. 5. The police knew his name, they knew his face, they knew he was out there. And Gloria Choi still ended up dead on the side of the road. So the question isn't just who did this. The question is who let this happen. Gloria Choi was 33 years old, a single mother in Lakewood, Washington. By all accounts, warm, strong, loved by her friends. She met a man named William "Billy" Rickman, and what looked like the romance of a lifetime turned out to be something investigators would later call a calculated trap. The tactic has a name: love bombing, overwhelming a person with attention, affection, devotion, burying them in it, until the relationship becomes their entire world. And then when the relationship ends, the mask comes off. What followed was a pattern of stalking, harassment, and ultimately murder. This is the full investigation into the Gloria Choi case. The psychology, the failures, the trial, and the uncomfortable questions nobody in power wants to answer. Here's what the official record tells us. Gloria Choi was a single mother living in Pierce County, Washington, when she entered a relationship with William "Billy" Rickman. To people on the outside, Rickman appeared devoted intensely, almost overwhelmingly so. That intensity, investigators would later conclude, was the red flag hiding in plain sight. Love bombing is the clinical term, a pattern of manipulation where an abuser floods their target with affection to create emotional dependency and control. When Gloria ended the relationship, Rickman did not accept it. The stalking began. Gloria and her friends contacted Lakewood, Washington's 911 dispatch 4 times in a 48-hour window to report that Rickman was following her. The calls were made, the reports were filed, the danger was documented. And then on her drive home from work, Billy Rickman ran Gloria Choi's Ford Ranger off the road. As she placed her 5th 911 call from inside that vehicle, Rickman shot her multiple times, 8 gunshots. She was on the line with emergency services when it happened. Rickman then fled and remained on the run for 4 days before he was captured. Prosecutors Greg Greer and Corinne Schnepp built the case against him. He was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. CBS's 48 Hours, reported by Natalie Morales, covered the full investigation in a May 2026 episode, featuring interviews with Gloria's best friend Brianna Eberly, friend Jacob Blue, and eyewitness Terry Estval. Here's where it gets uncomfortable, folks, because the conviction of Billy Rickman, as right and as overdue as it was, does not close the book on this case. Not even close. Gloria Choi called 911 5 times, 5 documented contacts with law enforcement in under 48 hours, and she was still murdered. In the aftermath, Lakewood police are now facing a lawsuit over their response, or rather, their lack of response to Gloria's reports. Critics and domestic violence advocates are pointing to this case as a textbook example of systemic failure in how law enforcement handles stalking and domestic violence threats. The pattern is tragically familiar. A woman reports danger repeatedly, the system logs the calls, and the protection never materializes until it's too late. Victim advocates argue that the police treated Gloria's reports as low-priority nuisance calls rather than escalating indicators of lethal danger. There is also a broader conversation being driven by this case about the psychology of love bombing itself, how it is not adequately recognized by law enforcement, by courts, or even by victims themselves as a precursor to violence. When the affection is overwhelming enough, it obscures the threat. And when the threat finally becomes visible, it can already be too late. Gloria's story is tragically proof of that. All right. The mainstream story here is already grim enough. A woman is failed by the system, a man goes to prison, and everyone files their paperwork and goes home. But my research associate here, my colleague who I did not invite but who shows up anyway, has some additional thoughts. Go ahead.
I want to start with a simple question. 5 calls, 5 documented contacts with emergency services, and nothing happened until she was already dead on the road. Now, I'm not saying there's a grand conspiracy, but I am saying, look at the pattern.
The pattern? You mean the pattern of police being slow? That's not a conspiracy, that's a Tuesday.
It's bigger than one slow response. Lakewood police are now facing a lawsuit. But here's the question nobody's asking loudly enough. Why are departments across the country consistently undertrained, under-equipped, and apparently unmotivated to act on stalking reports, specifically when the victim is a woman of color?
Okay, now we're somewhere. You think this is systemic, not accidental.
Follow the money. Police departments receive federal funding tied to certain crime clearance rates. Stalking prevention, that doesn't clear cases, that doesn't get you the numbers. So there's a structural incentive to respond after the crime, not before it.
Get a load of this. So you're saying the whole system is built to show up for the body, not for the woman.
I'm saying the data supports that reading. And Gloria Choi is not the only name. She's just the one who got a TV episode
Okay, what else?
of bombing. It is now a widely recognized psychological term. But ask yourself, why is it not yet legally codified in most states? Coercive control legislation exists in some places. The UK actually criminalized it. But in Washington state, in most of the US, you can love bomb someone, gaslight them, systematically destroy their autonomy, and face zero legal consequences until the moment you physically harm them.
You cannot be serious. So the behavior that leads to the murder is perfectly legal.
Right up until the trigger is pulled. The law is designed to respond to events, not patterns. And abusers who study control, and some of them do study it, know exactly how far they can go without crossing a legal line.
That's actually terrifying and not that conspiratorial.
Is where it gets more uncomfortable. Billy Rickman was 46 years old. Men like him do not develop these patterns overnight. The question I'd be asking is, was there a prior record, prior complaints, prior relationships where warning signs were documented and ignored? Because if there were, and they didn't show up in this case until it was too late, that's not just a tragedy. That's a pipeline.
Oh, it gets better. A pipeline, walk me through that.
Serial abusers frequently have a trail. Restraining orders, dismissed complaints, cases that went nowhere. If Rickman had that trail, and we don't yet have full public disclosure, then Gloria Choi was failed not just by Lakewood PD in those 48 hours, but by every institution that had a chance to stop him years before.
The lawsuit might uncover that.
That's exactly why lawsuits matter. Not just for the family, for the records, because records don't lie. People bury them, but records don't lie.
All right, I'll give you that one. Reluctantly, very reluctantly.
Last thing, the media cycle on cases like this is roughly 72 hours unless a documentary picks it up. CBS did. Good. But how many Glorias don't get the episode? How many names never trend? The visibility of a victim should not determine the quality of justice they receive. And right now, it does.
Okay, I was going to make a sarcastic remark, but I actually can't. That's just true.
That's all I've got, for now.
Fantastic, terrifying, moving on. So where does all of this converge? Here's the breakdown. The mainstream account, the trial, the conviction, the CBS investigation confirms the core facts. Billy Rickman love-bombed Gloria Choi, stalked her after their breakup, and murdered her despite 911 calls. He is in prison for life. That part, not disputed. Where mainstream and alternative perspectives agree. The police response was inadequate. There is a lawsuit. There are documented failures. The system did not protect Gloria even when she was actively asking for help. Where they diverge, the alternative and critical view asks whether this was systemic, whether the unresponse to stalking reports, particularly for women of color, reflects structural incentives and legal blind spots rather than isolated incompetence. The conspiracy framing, such as it is here, isn't about lizard people or secret cabals. It's about a legal and institutional framework that is, functionally, better designed to investigate murders than to prevent them. The one genuinely unanswered question: Rickman's prior history. If records exist of past complaints or patterns, and if those records were available to law enforcement before December 2021, the failure in this case goes much deeper than a single police department on a single night. The lawsuit may surface those answers. Here is what the evidence actually tells us: no spin, no theater. Billy Rickman used love bombing as a deliberate mechanism of control, escalated to stalking and murder when that control was broken, and is now serving life in prison. Justice in that narrow sense was served. But the deeper story is this: Gloria Choi did everything right. She recognized the danger. She left. She called for help repeatedly, desperately, 5 times in 48 hours. And the institutions built to protect her did not act in time. The lawsuit against Lakewood Police is not just about compensation for a family. It's about accountability for a systemic failure that is replicated across this country every single day. Love bombing is real. It is documented. It is a recognized precursor to escalating abuse and violence. And it is still not legally recognized as the warning it is in most U.S. jurisdictions. Until the law catches up with the psychology, until he was obsessively devoted is treated as the red flag it is rather than the romantic fantasy, more women will find themselves exactly where Gloria Choi was, on the phone with 911, hoping someone answers in time. That's the Gloria Choi file, officially closed with a conviction, unofficially wide open with unanswered questions about who else failed her and why. Drop your theory in the comments. Hit subscribe if you want the next classified briefing, and remember, The truth doesn't care if you believe it.